Some political parties are calling for President Cyril Ramaphosa to step down following the revelations about the theft at his Phala Phala farm in Limpopo. The former spy boss, Arthur Fraser, claims that around $4 million in cash was stolen and alleges that a cover-up was then hatched on the back of that. However, how much of an impact can these developments have on the president? Joining me now for this conversation is political analyst Aubrey Matshiqi, who joins us via the virtual platform. Mr. Matshiqi, thank you very much for your time. Let me start by asking the question about whether you think President Cyril Ramaphosa will at all enjoy or attain the second term here, given the 4 provinces, I think, that have endorsed him by now, given what is going on at the moment.
Well, this is the deepest crisis President Cyril Ramaphosa has faced since his ascendance to the throne as president of the ANC in December 2017 and that of the country in February 2018. Now, you will remember that President Cyril Ramaphosa rises on the ashes of what we call the 9 wasted years of Jacob Zuma's presidency, which in effect, actually, are 9 wasted years of ANC misrule. Also, he rises partly because he is viewed in contradistinction to Jacob Zuma, who has become a metaphor for corruption in this country, and therefore Cyril Ramaphosa is the antithesis. And so what has emerged is this construct, Cyril Ramaphosa, and I think one of the crises he is facing at the level of perception is that of the gap between reality and the construct. Now, this has potentially quite dire consequences for him, both as head of state and as president of the party. Remember, this is happening in the context of the ANC going to its policy conference in July. Now, I can assure you that there is a very strong possibility that the policy conference will be like the other provincial conferences we have seen, where provinces have not been able to discuss policy because they've spent the entire time arguing over the attendance register. In this case, though, I don't think battles will be over the attendance register. I think, first of all, there's going to be an attempt to turn the policy conference into a national general council. And secondly, there's going to be an attempt to put on the agenda the question of the step-aside rule of the ANC with the aim of having it reviewed to the disadvantage of the president. And the balance of forces, of course, at the time, and the balance of support at the time of the policy conference will determine the extent to which the policy conference will be the place at which the beginning of the end for him begins or not.
Well, let me quickly latch on the very last element you've touched on, and that is the step-aside rule. Ace Magashule sits where he is now because of that very rule. I spoke to the Hawks spokesperson just moments ago, and she has made it clear that they are investigating corruption and possible money laundering in relation to what has happened at the president's farm. But she was unclear as to who exactly these charges are being investigated against. Does that give anyone within the ANC the ammunition to go after the president now that law enforcement has confirmed that they are investigating crimes around this matter?
Well, remember that the president does not have to be found guilty of a crime. What is important is that the allegations are being converted into a negative political perception about him. Now, whether the perception is grounded in truth or not is not the issue. The issue is whether such perception can be weaponized against the president, and whether it can have, therefore, the effect of delivering his political demise. So, even long before we reach the point where the Hawks conclude their investigations, long before charges are laid against the president or other people, what may overtake and outstrip the legal processes is the political process. In other words, the damage to his political fortunes may be done much earlier than it takes for the Hawks to conclude their investigations.
Well, these conversations, exactly the conversation that you and I are having, they're not confined to the ANC alone. Members of the public are probably watching this very keenly. Who's next in line if this president does not even get to conclude his first term?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's not surprised that there's so much interest in what may or may not happen to the president. It is the manner in which he ascends to the throne which informs people's responses at the moment. Because remember, we operate in a political milieu of deception and counter-deception strategies. A political milieu in which people reduce political battles to battles between angels and devils. In this case, the angel is President Cyril Ramaphosa. When, in essence, political battles are almost always battles between angels with horns and devils with halos, and what the two have in common is a God complex. And so, to some extent, the president is facing his deepest perception crisis, precisely because, with the help to some extent of certain sections of the media, a construct was created, a construct of this Messiah who is an angel, who is the antithesis of this metaphor of corruption and all things venal, Jacob Zuma. And as I said, therefore, what is happening is that there is a struggle to bridge the gap between the construct and reality. Well, and also, there are forces outside the ANC that are interested in the outcome of what will happen around the president and the impact it will have on the succession battle in the ANC.
Based on that very perception crisis, and you know, time is always the enemy here, I'm going to ask you to be very brief if you can. Based on that very perception crisis that the president faces right now, would you be surprised if he held a media briefing tomorrow to basically lay his cards on the table as to what actually happened? Because some people have suggested that this is what he should be doing.
Well, it is not going to happen. He is not going to lay his cards open to the nation tomorrow, but I would not be surprised if he did. What is not going to happen, Zilangat, is that this time I think it will be difficult for the president to giggle himself out of this corner.
Aubrey Matshiqi, let me thank you very much for your time, political analyst, trying to give us insight into what possibly is happening even in the mind of the president. Well, let's leave it there.